The second speaker for the capitalists is Dr. Ridpath.
Thank you. Capitalism versus socialism. What is the moral social system? There really are only two central issues in this debate. The first issue is to argue for the moral code underlying capitalism or underlying socialism. Dr. Peikoff has concerned himself with the issue of the moral code underlying capitalism, the code of rational egoism, and he has shown that this moral code is validated by man's nature as a rational being and by man's life as his ultimate value. I want to note that in doing this, we have not asserted our moral code, that we have gone to the pains of arguing for our moral code on the basis of man's nature. We have, in fact, done what the debate topic demands so far in making a case for the morality of our system, and I look forward to our opponents doing the same. The second issue in this debate is the application of this moral code to the question, what is the moral social system? And that is what I'm going to address myself to. In moving from the moral code to the question of the proper society for man, the first point to make is that to live, which means to use his mind and to act on the basis of his thinking, man in a social setting needs one thing: freedom. And this, in essence, means freedom from the initiation of physical force or fraud by others against him. This freedom is man's fundamental social requirement if he is to be able to live by his mind. It therefore is true that it is moral to be free. The initiation of physical force is the primary social evil. A social system built on recognizing the value of freedom is the moral social system. Any social system adopting and institutionalizing the initiation of physical force in any way for any purpose is by that fact an evil social system and an enemy of man's life. Now, let us consider the state, the government, as a social institution. What is the essence of this institution? The government is not merely a set of laws. It is not a cooperative organization. It is not like an insurance company. It isn't a charity. The government, i.e. the state, is properly defined as that social institution, the only social institution that has a legal monopoly over the use of force in society. It is society's only legally authorized social institution. Now combine this fact with man's need for freedom, with the morality of ensuring that men are free. And what do you get? You get the conclusion that the moral government will use its monopoly on force only to retaliate against those who initiate force. You get a government that seeks not to violate man's need to be free, but to protect man's need to be free. You get a government whose only morally legitimate function is to protect the individual's rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. You get the only moral social system that there is, pure, undiluted, laissez-faire capitalism. The principle of recognizing individual rights is our way of safeguarding man's need to be free from force. Rights protect man in his freedom to act in pursuit of his life. Rights ensure that men will be free to think, free to act, free to enjoy the fruits of their actions. Rights protect men from each other. They certainly don't enslave men to each other. Thus, there can be no such thing as rights to the property of others or rights to be the beneficiary of the unchosen actions of others. There are no rights to food, to shelter, to health, to education, and the like, precisely because such so-called rights are, in fact, coercive claims on the property and the actions of others. These rights are really a wholesale assault on the very notion of rights itself, and are we mindful of George Orwell's slogans such as war is peace, knowledge is ignorance, and freedom is slavery, of which I'll have a little more to say later. The moral society, therefore, is the society where the government stands ready to retaliate when someone's rights are violated, but it never itself initiates force and violates its citizens' rights for any purpose. The proper function of the government is to supply the courts, the police, and the military, and that's it. And this is precisely what capitalism, properly defined, is. Capitalism is that social system based on the total, uncompromising defense of individual rights. Capitalism is the only social system in which all property is privately owned. Capitalism is the only such social system in which men resolve their differences and pursue their individual ends exclusively through rational persuasion, voluntary agreement, and free trade. Capitalism is the only social system in which the initiation of physical force and fraud are abolished from human affairs. Capitalism is the social system which recognizes the social needs of man's nature. Capitalism, therefore, as I said in my quote for this debate, is the only moral, productive, and benevolent social system that there is. Such a social system has never yet fully existed. In 19th century North America, it was the most closely approximated. In the 19th century, the principle that men would not initiate physical force against each other in their social relationships was more closely approximated than in any other time in human history. In the 20th century, all vestiges of this principle have been totally swept away in the altruist welfare state orgy of our times. There has never been pure capitalism, and there certainly isn't any capitalism in the 20th century. Nevertheless, we do not advocate capitalism because of our looking at the past. We advocate capitalism while looking ahead, to a free, prosperous, and civilized future. I think you can see why we are proud to appear here tonight as advocates of capitalism as the only moral system for man. Thank you.